What happens after death? Real near-death stories revealed. Have you ever wondered what happens after we die? The stories about death always leave us confused and curious. Is death truly the end, or just a transition to another world that we can't fully comprehend? Millions of people have gone through near-death experiences and shared mysterious stories about light, endless peace, and encounters with beings not from this world. Are these stories real? Or are they just hallucinations created by our brains when faced with death? In this video, we'll explore real stories from those who have been on the brink of life and death. Along with that, we'll examine how scientists explain these phenomena and consider different perspectives on death across cultures and religions. Is death truly an end, or merely a turning point in the endless journey of the soul? Surely, this question will not only spark curiosity, but also make us reflect on life and how we view death. Let's dive into these stories and find the answers for ourselves. Dr. Eben Alexander's story. Dr. Eben Alexander, a renowned neuroscientist, had a strange near-death experience when he fell into a coma for 7 days due to a severe stroke. Before the accident, he was a skeptic about supernatural stories related to death. However, what he experienced while in a coma completely changed his view on life and death. During his time in a coma, Alexander did not simply lose consciousness. He underwent a mystical journey to another world. He described being enveloped in a stunningly beautiful light, where the sense of space and time completely disappeared. Alongside him was a peaceful presence, as though some invisible force was guiding him through this different realm. In this space, he felt no pain or fear, only absolute tranquility. He met friendly beings and felt a deep connection with everything in the universe. Notably, he even encountered a woman whom he believed was his deceased mother. What makes Eben Alexander's story so special is how clearly and coherently he describes his experiences, making listeners and readers think deeply about their own beliefs. After waking up and recovering, he spent many years researching and reflecting on what had happened. Ultimately, he wrote the book Proof of Heaven to share his experience with the world. In it, he asserts that life is not merely a series of biological responses, but it holds a spiritual depth that modern science cannot explain. When asked about what he believed after the experience, Alexander stated that death is not the end, but rather a transition to a higher state of existence. He also referenced the teachings of ancient philosophers and religions, like Plato, who argued that death is merely a release from the physical body, and the soul continues to exist. Alexander's assertion has caused many people to rethink their views on life and death. A famous quote by the philosopher Socrates reads, "Death is not the worst thing that can happen to a man. We fear it because we do not know what it will bring." Experiences like Alexander's suggest that death may not be an ending, but rather a journey to another level of existence, and that there is nothing to fear in it. Tommy's story and the supernatural near-death experience. Tommy, a man in his 40s, had a serious car accident. While waiting for rescue workers, he nearly lost his life. What was strange was that during this time, Tommy did not feel any pain. Instead, he described being drawn into a brilliantly lit tunnel, as though some strong force was pulling him forward. Tommy went on to describe that, in this space, everything was brightly lit, and he sensed the presence of deceased loved ones. The feeling of time and space was non-existent, and he no longer felt like a human in a physical body, but rather as a soul moving through an expansive and peaceful realm. He heard whispers, but not from anyone he had met in his life, but from voices seemingly coming from a far-off place, full of love and tranquility. When he woke up and recovered, Tommy felt as though his eyes had been opened, revealing a different world, one he had never considered before. He began to change the way he lived, becoming more optimistic and seeing life in a deeper, more meaningful way. Tommy's story brings to mind a famous quote from author Helen Keller: "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside us while we live." From Tommy's experience, we can see that death is not something to fear, but rather a part of an ongoing journey. Many others who have had similar experiences have reported similar encounters. They sense a connection with those who have passed, a sense of peace and unconditional love. In these moments, death no longer seems like something to fear, but rather a natural part of life's cycle. Scientific analysis of near-death experiences. Scientists have long tried to explain near-death experiences using biological and psychological theories. One of the most common theories is that when the body is deprived of oxygen, the brain creates vivid images and sensations to help the person cope with fear and pain. This is the theory proposed by researchers like Sam Parnia, a doctor who specializes in the study of near-death experiences. Parnia suggests that when the brain lacks oxygen, the neurons in the brain function erratically, leading to hallucinations and supernatural sensations. However, these theories do not fully explain the experiences of those who have been clinically dead and then revived. Many have reported events that go beyond scientific understanding, such as encounters with friendly beings or sensing the presence of deceased souls. This has led scientists to reconsider the possibility of the existence of the soul and other supernatural experiences. While science has yet to provide a conclusive explanation for near-death experiences, it cannot deny that these experiences feel very real to those who have gone through them. People who have had these experiences do not just feel like they've entered another world. They sense a deep, abiding peace, as though they've connected with an eternal realm. This suggests that there might be something beyond what science currently understands. The social perspective on death. Death has always been a sensitive subject in society, not only because it is inevitable, but also because different cultures and societies view it in very different ways. While many Western cultures tend to see death as an end, a tragic closing chapter to life, many Eastern cultures view it as a transition, a step in the continuous cycle of life. Some religions and philosophies, such as Buddhism and Hinduism, believe that death is not an end but a rebirth, where the soul continues its journey in another form. We can clearly see this difference in how people from Eastern countries face death. In countries like India, China, and Japan, death is often not seen as a tragic event, but a natural part of the process. For example, in Indian culture, death is viewed as liberation from the physical body to achieve a higher state, part of the cycle of reincarnation. Hindus believe that when a person dies, their soul is reborn in another form, depending on their karma. Death, in this view, is not an end, but a necessary step in spiritual evolution. Buddhism shares a similar perspective. Buddha taught that birth and death are part of an endless cycle, where life and death follow each other in a constant loop. However, death is not something to fear. It is a path to liberation from worldly suffering, a way to escape attachment to the self and attain nirvana, a state of eternal peace. Therefore, in Buddhism, death is not to be avoided but embraced as part of the process of spiritual freedom. In contrast, in Western societies, death is often seen as something to be feared, a threatening event that most people do not want to face. Especially in modern cultures, where life is often placed at the forefront, death has become a taboo topic. This is why many people feel uneasy when thinking about death. They fear it because they do not know what it will bring, and they cannot accept that one day they will have to face the end of their life. However, viewing death as something to avoid can make people live in constant fear and anxiety. Instead of seeing death as the inevitable end, we can view it as a part of existence, a necessary transition that opens up new opportunities, a process of moving toward a higher spiritual state. That is why people like Tommy, after experiencing near death, changed their views on death. They no longer see it with fear, but as a peaceful transition, part of their spiritual journey. A famous quote from the Western philosopher Albert Einstein can help us better understand the relationship between life and death. He said, "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside us while we live." This statement not only confirms that death is not the end, but also reflects an open view of life and death, suggesting that death is not merely a finality, but part of an ongoing cycle. Many psychological studies have shown that accepting death can actually help people live more deeply. Research by American psychologist Irvin D. Yalom, in his book Existential Psychotherapy, argues that accepting death allows people to live more freely and find meaning in life. When we are no longer afraid of death, we can live more fully, unburdened by unnecessary worries. Thus, death is not something to fear, but an inseparable part of life. Instead of fearing it, we can choose to see it as a transition, a necessary step in the eternal journey of existence and spirit. Certainly, each of us has unanswered questions about death and life. Near-death experiences have caused many people to completely change their perspective on life, viewing it in a deeper and more meaningful way. And perhaps you too are standing before a big question. Have we truly understood life and death? If you feel that these stories have touched your heart, don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments. Let's continue exploring the mysteries of life and death together. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the upcoming videos where we will continue our journey to seek truth and deeper meaning in this life. Thank you for following and sharing your reflections with us. Keep thinking, seeking, and asking questions, because only when we dare to ask can we uncover the deepest truths of life.